Hi, everybody. My name is Marieke. I'm a life coach at Your Novel Life, and I'm here today to share some tips with you, or a video blog about what I wish I knew then when I was handling my baby's eczema before I became a life coach. So really, my daughter's now 7, and she's dairy intolerant, sensitive, and our journey with her eczema really started right around when she was about 4 months old. And I had noticed that her cradle cap kind of kept spreading and migrating onto her face, and she had small patches on her body, but nothing too major. But really, the way it started migrating onto her face really freaked me out. And I didn't know what to do. And I thought, I've never seen cradle cap that looks like this. Could it be eczema? So I started researching. And what I found was, it probably was really bad eczema. And I tend to go more of a natural route. And what I started discovering was it was probably related to food. But I wasn't really sure. So I went to my doctor and described, brought Fira, my daughter, with me. And she said, no, there's zero connection between, there's no conclusive evidence or whatever between eczema and food issues. And I just thought, this just doesn't sound right. I don't know. Something about it just felt off. And I'm a big believer that food is medicine, so it would make sense that for me it felt off. And so that was the first, that's the first tip actually that I have, is trusting your own gut, trusting yourself, trusting your intuition. Because I ultimately went off dairy myself, and I had also consulted with some naturopaths, did a ton more research, and for me, the biggest maybe allergen that I was eating was for sure dairy, and so that's what I cut out, and I noticed a difference in my daughter's skin every 2 weeks, because I was still breastfeeding at the time. Every 2 weeks, she started, her skin just started clearing up and clearing up and clearing up, and I probably didn't start doing that until she was maybe around 6 months old. And by the time she was a year, she was basically eczema free. So that was my gut was right. I trusted my gut. One of the other ways that we handled her eczema is that she would just cry. You could just see that she was in so much pain. And just like this internal frustration, I could just sense that that's what she had. And, as moms, like we sense what our kids need pretty much. And I've never been a big pacifier mom or Seuss, like the little sucky things. And for whatever reason, I had one around. And at this particular moment when she was just freaking out, I couldn't settle her. Her eczema was so bad. And you could just see that she was just in pain and struggling and frustrated. I just gave her that pacifier, and she just went... And it was just like all the frustration in her body just went out into that thing, and she found an outlet for herself. She found a way to soothe herself. And maybe that sounds crazy to you. I saw it with my own eyes. It worked amazingly. And so, again, I trusted my gut. I trusted that this weird plastic thing was going to do something, and it did, because I had tried everything, and I was also at my wit's end, and her screaming was at such a pitch too that I was like, oh, I can't handle it anymore. So that pacifier became her go-to self-soother, even after her eczema was gone, even after, she was a little bit older. She used it to just calm herself when she needed that calming, and I very much look at these things very differently now. But that's really one of my first takeaways that I want to share with you is trusting your gut. Trust your gut to know how to care for your child. And even when your doctor tells you it might be something else, trust that. So like I said, her eczema pretty much after I cut dairy, which I didn't actually do until about 6 months, her eczema pretty much went away. Now, there's a gap between the 4 months when it really was at like getting really, really worse, and it got even worse after that, and the 6 months when I started to cut dairy, because, and this is my next tip, is acceptance. And it's really hard to accept that your baby's got some kind of weird skin condition or, intestinal issue or allergy or intolerance or whatever. So I found that just challenging in and of itself, but I also found the fact that I was going to have to give up cheese and cream in my coffee. Really, really scary. I didn't feel like doing it. I felt like, oh my God, I've just gone through pregnancy where I gave up alcohol. And, I feel like I'm just getting my body back. I just want to do whatever the hell I want to do. Yeah, that was not going to happen. When I realized what the issue was, that it was dairy. So, which, to be honest, I didn't even realize it at the time because it was before I cut it out, but my gut was telling me that. So acceptance, that's my next tip or lesson learned, really, and that I want to share with you, is that, and this is, as my life coach wisdom now tells me, is that all of our suffering, no matter what we're doing in life, when we're suffering, it's because we're not accepting what is. And the incredible Byron Katie, who's really an enlightened person, but she's one of my mentors, but she talks about this, that suffering, all of our suffering comes from not accepting what is. And what was then was that my daughter was suffering from eczema. I pretty much had this intuitive hit that it was dairy, and I didn't want to accept that. And once I did and made the decision then to move forward with that, man, things got easier. So that's my tip, is accepting what is and accepting what you're willing to do or not do, because that's okay too. The next thing that I'm sure many of you can relate to if you're watching this and you follow the eczema blog at all is that, I want to encourage you all to feel all the feelings, because I had grief, I had frustration, I had anger, I had resentment, I had fear. I had so many of these feelings, and at the time I struggled, and this kind of goes hand in hand with acceptance, but I struggled to give myself the permission to feel all those things, especially grief. I think grief was a big one. So let yourself feel sad for what you're giving up. Let yourself feel sad for the fact that your baby, might look, I don't know, freakish. Let yourself feel frustrated, like, why me? Let yourself feel those things, and then move on. But when we resist feeling them, they persist. What we resist persists, right? So give yourself the freedom and the space and the grace to feel into whatever it is you're feeling. Journal it out. Talk about it with somebody. But I invite you not to stay there. Don't get stuck there, because when we get stuck there, that's when we don't move forward. That's when we don't make progress. That's when we don't heal. And that's really what this ultimately is about, is healing our babies, our children, ourselves, which leads me to the next tip, which is feeling empowered and knowing that you can do something. There's always something you can do. So letting go of the shoulds that accompany this process, and realizing that you have a choice in how you handle this. So it's not, oh, I should cut out dairy. It's, no, I'm choosing to cut out dairy because I'm willing to see if it makes a difference in my daughter's health. I'm choosing to not eat eggs or soy or use certain garments or use specific creams. It's a choice that we make the way we care for our children. It's a choice. We have other choices. But when we say should, it takes away our power. When we say I'm willing to do this, I'm choosing to do this, we're standing in our power, because we're realizing that we have a choice in the matter. And that's really powerful. So I invite you to feel into the power that you have as you navigate these waters and figure out how to handle all of this. My next tip is get support, share your story, reach out, connect with others. As soon as I started talking about my own frustrations, my own fears, just my own experience with Fira's eczema, all of a sudden people started, like out of the woodwork, right? And it was the same when I had miscarriages. I started talking about them openly. When you show that vulnerability and you start sharing bits of yourself like that, people open up as well, and we actually connect, and it creates community, and we can inspire each other. And my cutting out dairy, I talk about it freely to everybody because it changed her life, and it changed mine as well. Which leads me to my next, and final lesson learned is find the blessing. And, this is a beautiful way to be in life when we're faced with hardship. And it's, how could this struggle, how could this issue, how could this problem be happening for me and not to me? And one of the greatest things that has come out of this whole experience with Fira's eczema is, one, healing it for herself, But on a very personal level for me, when I cut out dairy, my health improved tenfold personally. I had suffered from constipation for 37 years, I think. I don't know, maybe when I was really young I didn't have it, but for most of my teens and adult life, I have had constipation. And when I cut out dairy, guess what? Yeah, it's gone. I poop. Big, delicious poops. And I have no problem talking about it because it's so important for our own health, for the way I feel in my own body. And so it was such a blessing for me and myself to go through the experience, because I'm actually a healthier mom. I'm a more, I get less agitated, and I didn't realize I had any kind of dairy sensitivity until I went through this experience myself. But I know when I dibble dabble a little bit, and mostly or actually now if I do dibble dally in dairy at all, it's only sheep or goat. But even then I notice I have some sensitivities, and if I have an accumulation in my body, I'm irritable, I'm frustrated, and I was that person much more than I am now that I've cut this out. It also makes us, the blessing also for me is that we're much more aware of other people's sensitivities and intolerances, and also the power of food. And I always had this intuitive feeling or knowing that food was powerful, but now I saw it with my own eyes. And that's amazing. And that's an amazing gift to pass on to your kids, to share with your family. And I have lots of stories where I've shared our story with neighbors, with other friends who've gone on to see improvements in their own children's lives. From like really bad runny noses that got cleared up when they cut out dairy. So it's not always eczema necessarily. It could be other things. But so that's it. That's my story. I hope that this has been helpful. Just to recap, the lessons learned from me are: trust your gut, follow that intuitive hit. And if you don't feel like you have one, get quiet with yourself and just feel into what feels like could be the issue. And you might just need to play around and try things, but if you have a gut feeling, trust it. The next one is acceptance, accepting what is, and we release our suffering, or we certainly ease up on our suffering when we can release our resistance to what is. Feel all your feelings. Give yourself that permission to feel everything that you feel. Feel empowered by realizing that you have choices in how you handle this. You don't have to do anything. You could do nothing. I don't think you would, but you don't have to. So choose how you want to do it and know that you're making a choice instead of being forced into something. Get support, reach out, connect with other people, share your story. Don't live this by yourself, because there's so many people living it, and that's what we're here for. We're here to support each other. And finally, I invite you to find the blessing, and remember that, this is happening for me, not to me. And with that perspective, what can I do with it? What does that mean? What do I want to make this mean for myself, for my child? How can this be a blessing for our family? And with that, I wish you well. And you can find me at yournovellife.com if you have any questions whatsoever about this video, or if you want more details about my own experience. I didn't want to go too much into my own story, but I hope that's given you something to think about, some takeaways, and I would love to hear any comments or questions that you have. So again, this is Marieke from Your Novel Life, and I hope that this has been helpful, and I wish you well and your little ones well, or whoever's struggling with eczema. I know it's hard, but I also know that there are ways to deal with this, and a lot of this has to do with self-care for yourself too. So I hope that you find that for yourself. Take good care. Bye.